My name is Dina Klarisse. I am a writer and poet based in the Bay Area and also one of the newest board members of PAWA, Filipino American Writers and Artists, who have put together this incredible FilbookFest. This is the 7th Filipino American International Book Festival held in San Francisco. And it is, and it's totally an honor to be part of this and to be speaking with these incredible authors today. This panel is called Troubling Cultural Norms in Fiction, and we are going to be exploring the complexities of the Filipinx diaspora and the cultural challenges embedded within our stories. Also, how fiction can become a powerful tool for generational healing. And while I say this, I think we would be remiss if we did not mention that we are currently holding this panel and this festival during an ongoing genocide in Gaza of the Palestinian people. And we also want to hold in our hearts the victims and the innocent lives being taken in Gaza, the West Bank, as well as Lebanon and Iran. And we want to support our siblings in this colonial onslaught. And we also urge you, our audience, to be active. It is a voting year, so please contact your representatives. Let them know how you feel about these issues, because that is the only way we can promote change. That being said, thank you to our authors for being part of this panel. Again, it is such an honor to be speaking with you today. I'd like to give this space for you to introduce yourself and then also briefly talk about the book that you're discussing. So we can start with Maritza first.
Hello, is it working?
Yes.
Okay. I'm Maritza Roño. My pseudonym is IBKC Kui because I was a coward. When I first published a novel, I feared my father's wrath because he's not cast in the best light in this novel. But really quick, it's about my colon cancer story. I'm a 29-year colon cancer survivor. Thank you. And I created an 8-year-old character and a 9-year-old character, Filipino-American family. In my novel, the 19-year-old character is diagnosed with young onset colon cancer. So I chronicle her story, my story of chemo, but I also incorporate the big family dynamic for Filipinos, you know, the big, merry, nutty, dysfunctional family, the devout Catholic mother, the ghetto-talking brother, the militant father, and also a gay uncle. You know, there are a lot of characters in there. But yeah, and trauma. And I live in Park City now. I used to live here in San Francisco, and I really miss it here. I miss the diversity. And Park City, we'll probably get into the dynamics of where I live now. It's much different from here. And I also run a reading lounge in Park City.
Oh, that's awesome. I'm Tuazon. I'm a writer from Los Angeles. I write weird Filipino short stories. But the new book that came out is called Professional Lola. Unfortunately, it's sold out downstairs, so I'm sorry if you can't get a copy today. But you could order it online. Bookshop.org. I like to write weird things, and if you read my work, it's also weird and funny and heartbreaking. It'll make you cry and make you laugh, and then somebody's going to say, "Shh, just make sure you're paying attention." So, yeah, mic's open.
Oh yeah, we're sharing this one, right? Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Beverly Parayno. I am I'm a board member of PAWA and a committee member of the Filipino Book Festival. So I'm a little scattered, but I'm here. So let's see, I'm from the Bay, born and raised, born in Alameda, raised in San Jose. During the pandemic, I relocated to a small town called Cameron Park that no one's ever heard of. It's off of Highway 50 in the Sierra Nevada foothills. So I went from, Lake Merritt in Oakland to Lake Merritt in Oakland, very urban kind of setting,
to deer and wild turkeys and even eagles I've seen flying overhead. So I'm straight in the gold country now, and I feel like a country person when I come back into the city. So my book Wildflowers was in progress for a slightly embarrassing, probably 15 plus years. The collection was sitting on my hard drive because I didn't think it was publishable or good enough or ready in any way. This is my third festival and my first one to be here as an author, so I'm really excited about that. And yeah, I think that's all for now.
Thanks, Beverly. Hello, everyone. My name is Evelina Galang, and I write fiction. My book today is When the Hibiscus Falls, and it's my second short story collection. I have 3 novels. Wait, I have 2 novels. Wait, 1, 2. I have 2 novels, and I have one that I've just finished a second draft of, and then I have a book of stories called, or a book of essays called Lola's House: Filipino Women Living with War, about the experiences of Filipino comfort women during World War II. I live in Miami, and I teach at the University of Miami creative writing. I directed that program for almost 10 years, so really got excited about passing down legacy in terms of writing and finding your story and being authentic to the stories you want to tell. Which maybe I should say something about the story collection. This story collection, When the Hibiscus Falls, is really a collection of stories about women and the issues that they're going through, but then really family and legacy and how we pass on the different kinds of stories and practices and traumas and dealing with those kind of hurts between our families. So it came out last year, and it was kind of an interesting launch for me because it was, like I said, so much about the hibiscus blooms for exactly 1 day and then it goes away, but the next day there's always another hibiscus on the bloom. And my mom, who was 93, was super excited about this book. She read it a couple times. Her favorite is the one about where Miami is sinking into the city, into the ocean. But she read it a couple times. She was at all my online events. She came to the Milwaukee book launch, and she took everyone out, like some 20 people out for dinner afterwards. It was so amazing. And then in October, she passed away. And it gave such a different, significant meaning for me and the book because I felt like she was such a champion of the book. And it really is about that legacy that she has now given to me. And my nieces who are just like beginning to understand what it means to be Filipino American, because they too have grown up in Wisconsin where it's mostly white dominant culture, are really excited about, they have been excited for a while now, trying to discover who they are and what their role is in this larger community as Filipinos. So that's what the book's about.
Hi everybody, my name is Shannon C.F. Rogers. I'm a multiracial Filipino-American writer of young adult fiction, so I write for teenagers. My latest book is 18 Roses. It just came out this summer. It's about a reluctant debutante whose mom plans a debut behind her back. Even though she doesn't want to have one because she thinks she's too punk rock for that. I studied creative writing at the University of New Mexico. I'm from Albuquerque, New Mexico originally, and I also studied writing for young people at Antioch University, Los Angeles, and I'm based in Brooklyn now. I'm really excited for this panel today.
That's incredible. Thank you so much. Also, I was especially excited about everyone's books, but 18 Roses did feel very close to my story. I was also a very punk young lady who had a non-tillion instead of a cotillion. I was 18. I love that. That's actually a great transition to our first question, because I wanted to talk about the cultural expectations within the Filipinx community, and especially folks like us who were raised or who grew up or who have spent a significant time in the diaspora. For anyone who's not aware, I thought it was, when I first heard it, I thought it was a joke, but someone told me that the Philippines' major export was labor and Filipinos, but it is actually true. the statistic, I don't remember in my head, but a significant part of our population has left and continues to leave the Philippines for opportunities in other countries. With that leaving, we have a pressure to both assimilate into our new homes and our new communities, but also, paradoxically, this pressure to upkeep our Filipino traditions. The debut is part of one of those, being raised in a religious community, another one. And when I was reading your books, I did find this underlying theme of cultural expectations, and then also how your characters navigate and kind of, I'd say, fight against those. But my question is, how do you address these cultural expectations, both in your writing and in your personal lives? And what inspires you to write about those themes? We can start, I guess, down the line.
So, as a child of two Filipino immigrants who met in LA in the mid-1960s, I think the messages that I internalized were respect your elders, but that meant don't talk back, but to me that meant don't have a voice.
Yes.
It was always my dad lecturing. So that's a big theme, not theme, but like I cover that a lot in Groovy Girl, especially. And then also just family first. And my parents thought it was just all about family, not community, not anyone outside of family. They were not community minded. So I didn't see them volunteer at animal shelters. I didn't see them volunteer at church. Maybe my mom baked some cookies for the PTA, not even a Filipino dessert though. No ube or cassava, but you know, I didn't see that because it was all about family. Like my dad lending money to his siblings, not being paid back, but you know, that's a side point. So, you know, those two things I saw, but I think the two that I really like, I really want to cover are, it's called pakikisama, and it means simply to just get along with others. But beyond pakikisama, it's also just this intrinsic appreciation of togetherness. You know, like here we are, we're all together here, and we could talk for 3 hours, and that's pakikisama. We don't have to be doing anything in particular, you know, like playing a board game, or, you know, doesn't have to be a goal. So, you know, that, and also utang na loob. It literally means owing a debt to your insides, but I like to say it means owing a debt of your heart. It's more a debt of, I guess, it involves more respect and gratitude. So in my book, I'm able to address this because of what I saw growing up, and then I also see it in my family now, my immediate family. My boys, I don't feel like they're growing up Filipino. And I hate to admit this, because they don't see extended family. They don't witness it. They don't see, like, we go to a family party. We visited LA recently, and I saw my cousin's son go kiss and monopole or whatever, you know, he did to all the elders. He's, you know, greeting everybody. And then my boys, my older son went to get food, sat in a corner with my mom, and then the other one ran upstairs to play with the kids. So, you know, through my stories here, I'm able to portray that somehow because of my experience, both seeing, you know, pakikisama and utang loob growing up in my immediate family, mom, dad, and brother, and cousins, but then also seeing it, not seeing it now.
Yeah, it's tough to navigate through these things too.
I grew up a rebel girl like everybody else here, and or groovy girl, and like I was kind of the black sheep of my family. My family came from poverty, and to them they could only trust family. They didn't really trust anybody else who was not family. But getting older, they learned that, you know, the family that they have is slowly, because they're so tight knit, the family they have is shrinking as they age. You don't live forever. Your family can't live forever. You need to grow your family. And like, unlike my parents, like I had family, like friends that I consider my found family, who are not Filipino, but still kept my cultural identity going in there. And sharing that cultural identity kind of helped me maneuver my life, not just with my family, but with the outside world. And being able to share my culture with other people who are not familiar with our culture kind of made me appreciate, especially being older now and a lot of my family is gone, just appreciate our culture and what we have and what it can become. And I really, I think not just through my storytelling, but seeing other writers, seeing the new generation come up who are proud about their culture and they don't have to hide their culture. You know, they're proud of their baon, you know, they come with the longanisa and like, nobody's complaining about it, they actually want some, you know, but that's awesome. You know, and people were embracing that, and I really am just excited for the future and like the future generation of Filipino Americans and writers out there.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Dina, for all your prep and the questions. So, in my debut short story collection, Wildflowers, I guess I should probably just show you the book. So, you know, there's so many different themes to talk about, but silence is one that I really wanted to touch on. And specifically, I have characters in the book who deal with this kind of silence. For example, in the last story of the book is called Balikbayan. A female protagonist, Filipino American, has no choice but to travel back home to the Philippines with her elderly dad and stepmother because her father is aging and wants to sell the family land while he still is strong enough to travel. And she doesn't get along with him, she doesn't get along with her stepmother, but no one else was able to go with them, so she's kind of in this situation where she has to. And before they go, her dad secretly pulls her aside and says, "Don't tell your relatives you're divorced." And her mom, hi Patty, her mom also is now relocated, living in another city, also calls her to say, "Don't tell your relatives you're divorced," right? So it's kind of like, and I am divorced, and when I went to the Philippines with my parents, when relatives asked, "Where's my husband? Where's my asawa?" they would either they just like stared back at the person and didn't know what to say. At one point, my mom said she's newly single. So that was one way it was handled. And then at parties, I also have gotten cornered by my parents to say don't say anything. And if you're asked, my husband is at work. So there's the silence running through the collection. And then the silence around abuse. So I was actually I don't know if she's here, but hi. She talked to me downstairs right after the keynote speech. Right before the keynote speech, a reader introduced herself. Thanks so much. But she let me know that the first story in the book, which is called Savior, which deals with a patriarchal, abusive household, was really hard for her to read. And I said, yeah, it was really hard for me to write. And to be honest, it's probably 50 drafts it took to write that story. And so I know that's a hard story, but there's also this sense that the patriarchal household it's law, is the rule, you don't question it, this is the way the house is run. I actually, for the first time in my life, confronted my dad when the collection came out in May last year, because I wanted to give him a heads up that there was an abusive father in the story and kind of running concurrently throughout the book, and I didn't want him to be, I didn't even think about it. It was kind of an oh shit moment, because when the book came out, he was like, oh, we need 20 copies for our friends, can you sign it? And I was like, oh shit. So that happened, and to not air too much family laundry publicly, that confrontation of my dad about his abuse when we were growing up, physical and verbal abuse growing up, has disrupted 3 generations in my family, and we're still dealing with that right now.
Thanks, Beverly. That's tough. That's tough. I was sitting and I'm thinking about the question and everyone's answers. And one of the things that I grew up with, my dad was a physician and my mom was a graduate of English literature. And when they met, they were in Milwaukee. And as a kid, the oldest of 6 growing up, I always saw them, because we seemed to move around a lot, choosing family, because we were immigrants and our family was not with us, and in fact saw them trying to do things for our community, but they were all titos and titas, right? And I just kind of thought it was just their way. I didn't think it was like specifically a Filipino thing or whatever, but I just thought it was their way. And my dad was always out trying to help people, and like when we were living in Saskatchewan as young, and I remember that I found a newspaper article where they talked about the nurses, the Filipino nurses were having trouble getting housing in Canada. And so my parents, my dad and my mom got together with the nurses and some of the doctors that were there, and they said it's because they don't know who we are. And so they put on programs. I mean, it was cultural programs. It wasn't, anything like big and fantastic and angry and political, but it was cultural. And it was a way of introducing our community to the Canadian community. And that kind of practice with my parents happened in Peoria, it happened in Milwaukee, it happened everywhere we went. And then as I was working on this collection and I was creating some of the stories here, and also in my research, I came across this word, kapwa, which has been around now for a while. And I realized I made this connection between what they were doing my whole life, and I thought was just like a family thing. And there were always people in our house, we're always feeding people. There was always like these political conversations happening around, when we were little. And it's like, wait a second, oh, that's a Filipino thing? That's a community thing? Wow. Because I grew up in Milwaukee. There are not a lot of Filipinos in Milwaukee. There are very, there were 700 Filipino families in the state of Wisconsin at one point, right? So anyways, so like that experience and always being around so many people, feeding people, talking about like loud discussions about the different struggles that go back to where you came from, tenor, that was the experiences of the adults around me was something I think that happens in the stories of When the Hibiscus Falls, but not in any conscious way. Because it's such an integral part of my experiences growing up and being a child of witness, right? I just, for the longest time, no one even knew that I could understand Tagalog. I was, my mom would say, oh, be careful, she knows what you're saying. And then when you're a writer...
Silently listening.
Yeah, when you're a writer, right, then you start to collect these moments, these instances, these voices, these bits of Tagalog, even though you were never formally taught Tagalog. There's a way that you start to understand things intuitively. And I think that in the process of writing the stories, it came out for me, it comes out for me still, and I hope it always will be that way in this way where I'm not conscious of it, where I'm not trying to instigate or put it in there because it's a trend or it's an expectation of my readers or my community, that I want it to be organic. I guess I'm going to answer it that way.
Oh, I love that. I resonate with so much that has been said. I'm like, my mind's going a lot of different directions right now. Let me collect my thoughts. I think that in my work, because I write for young people and I work with young people, I think that the thing that inspires me the most to explore cultural norms is my own experience growing up as a mixed person, as a biracial person. I grew up with a Filipino mom and a white American dad. I think increasingly, I was just talking about my cousin, I was talking with my cousin about this at dinner last night, increasingly that's the experience of young people, that they're growing up in some kind of mixed family and that the family dynamics at home kind of cross cultures, in addition to being in a cultural context that one or both of your parents is removed from. And so perhaps they have these cultural norms that are from a bygone time. You know, my mom immigrated to the United States in the 80s, so she's got this kind of 80s Filipino sensibility, you know. So that was my experience, and I see this more and more with the young people that I work with and that I know and that are my readers now. So I think what's interesting to me in my work is exploring the way that cultural norms maybe bump up against each other, even at home and in our personal lives, and in the context in which young people are trying to do this really important work of identity formation, as they're trying to look at these silences that you mentioned, Beverly, or these found families that you mentioned, Evelina and EP, like, and trying to interpret, you know, where do I fit in with all of this?
That's incredible. Thank you so much for your answers. I noticed that constantly there are these underlying themes that are coming up, not just in your work, but in our discussion. Found family, creating communities, confronting trauma and confronting generational trauma, not just individual. In reading these different stories and also these different genres, because we do span genres and moods. Some of these stories are very humorous. We have funny writing, but we also have more serious and very straightforward writing about confronting trauma. So I wanted to ask you, how do you envision your writing and your work as part of generational healing? So not just you looking back on your past and dissecting all of these different individual stories, but how do you see it in the bigger part of the Filipinx diaspora? So speaking to young folks who are forming their identities, and then also older folks, wiser folks who have created their identities but are still shape-shifting in a way, and still forming. Because I don't think we ever stop growing up. How do you see your stories and your work as playing a role in that?
I always have to go first.
It's like being the eldest.
So I had the chance to speak to 30 students at Napa Valley College last year around this time, and they read Groovy Girl, which was amazing. But I still have the chills, like, oh, people are reading my books because I'm an indie author. And they were really shy during our discussion, but when they went up to me and asked me to sign their books, they shared, you know, how they really felt. And one student said, I can finally see myself in a character in fiction. And that just, oh my God, like, I still have
It's every writer's dream.
Yeah. And then, you know, there was this clown in you know, among the group, and he said, like, oh yeah, you know, everything was so familiar, the put downs and, you know, the perverted uncles. And I was like, oh, yeah, oops. But going on about just seeing, I guess, how I envision my stories, I think storytelling is just such a large part of creating community. And I'm running my first writer's workshop through our nonprofit in Park City. And you would think Park City, predominantly white, wealthy, no diversity. But in this workshop, we have a Lebanese man who was born in Moscow, and left Russia before the war began. We have an African-American man.
Her name was Sarah. She was 18. Her uncle gave her the story collection, and she sent me a big letter, handwritten. She reviewed every single story. She told me that she had been suicidal and her uncle had bought her this collection, and that she'd been carrying it around trying to get her mom to read it. And then she sent me her own poems. So this was such a beautiful experience, and one that I did not expect as a writer. I thought I was writing stories because I love language. I want to read the stories that I didn't get to read, so I'm going to try writing them. I learned from the masters. And I have gone on to teach those writers in my classroom as I work with young Filipino American writers or students of color. In my program, I am constantly teaching, right, those writers who have come before us as part of a larger continuum. So I feel like my answer to this, where is my writing in that generational healing? One, first we get to see ourselves in those stories. But two, we get to see the possibilities. And three, we can also figure out what are the other endings that can come from these traumas, that can come from these struggles that we have within our families and within our communities. And four, we can find our community. So that's it. I feel like Joe Biden now because I'm number one. Number two. I'm gonna go to Shannon now.
She's got plans, y'all. Not just concepts of a plan, she's got plans.
I have lesson plans.
So, oh my gosh, Maritza, I know you said it's hard to start, but it's hard to end too, because Dina's thoughtful questions have provoked so much here. I have a million follow-up questions for all of you. We'll talk another time. But in terms of, again, healing intergenerational trauma, so I write for young people, and I've had this really amazing experience where adults have come to me after reading my work and have said that they have changed their thinking around how they relate to their own teenage children. Wow. And that has been incredibly humbling for me. I'm not a parent, and I am not going to be one either. And so I think this is just it's an unintentional byproduct of what I was intending to do with the book, which was simply to center the feelings of young people. I write for them because I want to really honor and center their experiences, their inner world, which is so often discounted in perhaps Filipino culture in that way of, we don't talk back, that you mentioned, Maritza, but also just, I think, just at large, right? I mean, specifically I write for teenage girls in a world where, teenage girl in and of itself is considered an insult. That's a bad thing to be, right? That's a belittling thing to call someone. You're acting like a teenage girl, but I disagree. I think teenage girls are brilliant and strong and complicated, and so that's the that's the world that I want to capture on the page. And so I just really focused on centering those thoughts and feelings, because when I was a teenager, I felt very misunderstood. I felt very unheard most of the time, and I think that maybe in that way, by capturing that experience on the page, it invites people to maybe remember that young people have complicated, rich inner worlds as well, which has been amazing to hear.
That is incredible. I got a little emotional listening to you all speak. I was one of the young folks looking for faces and stories like mine in literature. I read Angel Luna when I was in college, and I remember thinking oh my God, this is a story about me. So thank you for writing my stories, everyone. But I think this is such an interesting thing to think about when we talk about generational healing. And if you weren't here for our incredible keynote speech by Ninoch Karoska yesterday, she talked about the struggle that the Filipinx diaspora has right now of carving ourselves a space in American literature. There are all of these, you can see them at the libraries, there are these huge spaces for identities and bodies of work and collections of those bodies of work that exist, and they're part of the genre. We have millions of classes asking us to read dead old white men who've been dead for centuries and ask our young folks, like, how does this resonate with your life? But we are just starting to see that with Filipino-American literature, when in fact we've been here for centuries. I think the first recorded Filipino in America was, I don't know, the 1400s in Louisiana.
Yes.
But if we were to think about the collective Filipinx literary genre, it could be a fun or deep question, as just choose where you want to go. But like, where would you place them in age? Let's say Filipino literature was a person. Would you say they were 12 years old, 15 years old? Because now I'm envisioning like where we are when a young person comes into the library, they were to look for a story like theirs. Would they be able to find it, and how would it speak to them?
Great question. That wasn't on the list.
Sorry, I'm also trying to be spontaneous.
I love that question, actually, because I was just talking to Ninochka right before this panel, and I was telling her that an agent wanted to represent me back in 2008. And this was my ticket, right? You would think. But she wanted me to change the ethnicity of the Filipino-American family in my novel if she were to represent me.
Wow.
And I'm sure you've heard this story before. I think Rod Pulido went through the same thing with Sundance, and they couldn't figure out where to put a Filipino in Hollywood. So that got me thinking, and that's why I'm an indie author. I chose the indie author path. But thinking about, Filipinos, she thought we were just interchangeable. Like try on a new outfit. Like, oh, how about, try Chinese American. That's what she suggested. Because Amy Tan, I think, had been popular around that time, late 90s. Maxine Kingston, those were the two like trailblazer, Asian American authors. And it just got me thinking, like, why do we have to cater to the mainstream? And what is the mainstream? She even thought, okay, because I was thinking, oh, it's white. But she even thought Chinese American was more mainstream than Filipino American, and maybe it was in 2008. But I was so taken aback and just really disenchanted with the publishing industry, and I could have pursued other agents. I'm sure there are like way more open-minded people out there, but I didn't. I just let it sit. And so I think now, so I wrote this book, Groovy Girl. I finished it in 2006, and I didn't revisit it till 2020, during the pandemic. Good time to do it. And I reread it, and I saw that there was a universal theme to it. Like, we can say the family's Filipino American, but I had people connect to me, like a Korean American who was teaching my son's Taekwondo, 35 years old. He thought my novel was hilarious, and he actually saw parallels to his life. So he's comparing his life to a 19-year-old colon cancer patient who was being pushed by her father in tennis and academics. So he had because his father's scary. I know him. He's a Grandmaster Kim, and this guy is Master Kim. But yeah, just and then also my neighbor from Texas. She's like, I'm just an ordinary white girl from Texas, but your book haunted me, and there were so many things that resonated with me. So back to your question about like how old, what was the question again?
These are also, you don't have to address the question directly. They're also to, promote discussions.
Yeah, I think, I want to say that our stories have been there for a long time. I read Carlos Bulosan, is that how you say it? Bulosan, in Asian American Studies at Cal. And wow, I mean, I thought, okay, here's another Filipino American writer, but he's just like the rest of the white writers that I read in high school. You know, the old white men. You know, the humankind, like the human, you know, condition is just universal, I think. So, I don't know if I even answered your question again, sorry. No, you did.
You know, I was going to bring up Ninochka too. Because meeting you is probably one of the highlights of my life. So, thank you. I stole your... That's okay, I promise I'm gonna make that scene. I'm gonna make
She's serious.
I'm sorry.
City Hall is right across the street.
Ninochka said yesterday, why aren't we banned? You know, like we're celebrating Banned Books Week last week, a couple weeks ago, and like, why aren't our books banned? Because we write about a lot of crazy things. Jessica Hagthorne writes a lot of crazy stuff in her books, you know? Rick Barrett has some, like, you know, sexually explicit stuff sometimes in his poetry. But why aren't we banned? And like, that started getting the wheels turning. And like, you know, and you asked a really interesting question, like, if the book in the library was a person, it would have to be a person who would get banned. So I was just starting to think, maybe a cult leader would be the perfect book representation for a successful Filipino-American book. I'm going down the spiral right now. There's a TED Talk about how to start a movement. And the person who starts the movement is not the cult leader, it is the followers that start the movement. So for a successful book to happen, you have to have those successful followers who tell other people, hey, this book's great. So like when you meet this person in the library, hey, you gotta meet this guy in the library. He knows everything, or she knows everything. You know, and it's like, oh, okay. Since I trust my friend, I'm gonna trust this person. So I think word of mouth, getting it out there, getting publishers, especially the big publishers, to invest in us would be really good. Because a book might be like the best book, but if it doesn't get doesn't get that, what's that thing that people would invest money, it shows more people, but it doesn't get that commercial
Clicks.
marketing. It doesn't get that marketing. You know, it's funny, we were talking yesterday about like the more, what's so backwards is that apparently I was talking to some writers, and apparently the more successful your book is, the less marketing they give you, because they assume that the book's going to sell itself.
Oh, wow.
But it's not, so watch out. But publishers need to pay more attention to us, because we've been like a long-standing pillar of this community for so long. We need that space, we need that opportunity, and people just, like, I get it, publishers are companies, they're trying to make money. Like, people aren't going to buy, not many people are going to buy our book compared to something they already know. But they've taken so many chances on other types of writing. Why not us?
Can I just jump in real quick too? I think the answer is, Ninochka suggested it, and I've been thinking about it a long time now. We need to have people, we need to have our people, we need to infiltrate.
Yeah.
We have to have agents, seriously. We need to have agents, we need to have publishers, we need to have editors, we need to have everybody on every level of the publishing industry, because those people are going to advocate for the books that need to be published.
Join her cult. Join her cult now.
No, because we at VONA, we're talking about that. You know, VONA is a writing organization for writers of color, and we've always focused on the writers. But, you know, I've been thinking about it, and it's like, you know, we need to be the ones that are in the field publishing the books.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And so anyone out there who is a person of color or of Filipino descent, if you're interested, this is the line of work that you should pursue, and we'll bring our books to you.
I'm tired of other people telling our stories. We should be telling our own stories.
How to tell them.
Yeah.
We have to tell our own stories, because if we don't speak for ourselves, other people will, and those other people, I don't necessarily agree with them. Sorry.
Well, thank you for that.
So I think we are in a real infancy stage. It's really exciting that there's this festival. I know there's one, Bel Canto in Long Beach. There's one coming up in Washington, D.C. We've got the Canadian festivals. But we are in an infancy. If you look at the invited authors, they're the same ones at every single festival. There's not enough of us yet. We're all on repeat at these festivals. And we need these new voices to emerge. And I also want to say that I don't want to be the Filipino American writer. I want to be Beverly Parayno, the writer. I want to write whatever I want to write about, when I want to write about it. I don't want to be boxed in. I don't want my stories to have to be navigating and negotiating Filipino American experience. I don't want to have to do that. I want to be an artist in my own right, going down whatever direction I want to go down. And I think that's when we're going to be, when we're going to arrive, when we are no longer that stereotypical writer that has to be dealing with these certain themes. Even though we are all Filipino American writers on this panel, we couldn't be more different as individuals, different backgrounds, different interests. So hey, don't box us in, and let us be artists first. And I just wanted to say, nonprofit organizations like PAWA, providing scholarships, promoting writers, workshops, anything that you can think of in your community to give writers the support they need to succeed. And I'll say it because we writers are also very competitive, and but support your fellow Filipino American writers. I'm on the board of PAWA, and I know we're competitive because I hear it and I see it, but we're not. There's not a lot of us, so let's support each other.
Yes.
Yeah.
I want to take a different, I think actually, even though we may be in our infancy, maybe we're still in some ways invisible, for me, who had to create that list of 10 and couldn't create it back in 1993, for me, as I witnessed writers like Amy Nezacomatado and Oliver de la Paz, and all these people who have come forward, I could, and I'm not going to forget names, so I'm just going to stop there in terms of naming names, but for me, as I sit and I watch these books coming up, as I see this panel, for me, this is so exciting. This is a lot more writing of Filipino American experiences, that I have ever witnessed. And I'm 63, and I've been reading since I was 9, maybe 7, and to me, this is exciting. We have a long way to go, I think, but I do think that we have to also see what's beautiful. And what's beautiful is that these diverse voices are coming forward, and we can be the readers, and we can be that person that shares a good book with someone else, right? But I do think, as dire as it seems on the one hand in terms of publishing and the industry, as readers and as students, there are more books out there than there ever was when I was 6. I'm getting younger and younger.
Yeah, I agree with that. Just throwing in my own anecdotal perspective, I do, for my job, I do school evaluations, and in New York State, I live in New York City, and so, and I'm very nosy, so whenever I go to a school, I go to the library first, and I'm like, what's in here? And I look for, do I look for myself? Yes, I do, of course. No, I do not look for myself. Yeah, they're weird if I didn't. But mostly I'm just general, just that, at the little table in the front, like what are they, new reads and things for the kids. And when I think about my own school library from, the early 2000s, and the YA books and the voices that were represented there, it's totally different now. You know, like I go into schools and I see Randy Rebai in every single school library, which is amazing. And so maybe maybe we're infants, but maybe we've made like a jump forward. I don't know. Maybe we're toddlers now.
That's amazing. I think we're all the ages. Maybe we can think of ourselves as a vampire. But Beverly did make an amazing point that we are not a monolith. Just this panel itself has so many incredible stories between us, so many different types of books. And this is a good place to let the audience know that you can purchase the books downstairs in the marketplace. It is actually the end of our panel, so we do not have time for any more questions. But I do invite you to join the authors if you'd like. We can have a book signing in the lobby downstairs.
I also have, sorry to interrupt.
No worries.
I also have free zines for people, so if you'd like to get some free zines, I have a lot of free zines and they come from a recipe book. They're not all recipes, but yeah, please come get a free zine. I'm not selling them, I'm giving them away.
Ooh, amazing. Yeah, so we're all going to walk to the elevator lobby together. We do have to vacate the room for the next panel. But yes, you're all welcome to come chat with us on the way down.